critics are usually pretty harsh on horror movies, so how do they feel about the original Halloween from 1978? Well, let's find out and see if I agree. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Mad Blood. In this video today, I'm going to be reacting to Rotten Tomato critic reviews for Halloween 1978. And these are going to be official Rotten Tomato critics. These are going to be actually people who meet the criteria to be a official Rotten Tomato critic. That still doesn't mean that they're not, some of them are not completely full of shit, especially if they don't know a lot about horror or the genre just in general, or they're just not really a horror fan, but they're still entitled to their opinion regardless. But still, this is generally considered one of the greatest horror movies ever. A lot of people will say this is John Carpenter's best movie ever, the greatest slasher movie ever made. Of course, it birthed the icon, Michael Myers, one of the greatest horror villains ever. Changed the holiday of Halloween forever. But anyways, yeah, and this movie still, not everybody likes Halloween 1978, especially people who have came up in the horror genre maybe later, maybe in the early 2000s or 2010s, when things really changed after Scream, after Saw, after all of that. Things changed a lot. Halloween 1978 is not really everybody's cup of tea. It's more about a slow build, not a lot of gore, subtle gore, definitely, and just the eeriness and the creepiness of the movie. But anyways, this should be interesting. Let's see what critics have to say about the original Halloween 1978. So Rotten Tomatoes has Halloween 1978 scored as certified fresh with a 96% tomato meter score, which is very high, especially for horror. This movie, 96% is great for any horror movie at all. That's one of the highest scores you will ever see for a horror movie. So, right off the bat, clearly the critics really enjoy Halloween 1978 despite its flaws. Like I said, it's one of those movies, it's not like a splatter fest. It's not like an exploitation film in a lot of ways, so that does help with critics. But so yeah, what about the audience score? So the audience score for Halloween 1978 is 89%, so still obviously very good, but not as high as 96%. What's the just kind of general overall critics consensus that they have on Rotten Tomatoes for 78? Well, it goes like this. They say scary, suspenseful, and viscerally thrilling. Halloween set the standard for modern horror films. And yeah, in a lot of ways, it definitely set the blueprint, especially for slashers that we even see all these years later in 2024. Of course, things have changed a lot, but still at the kind of the DNA of a lot of the horror movies we still see a lot of stuff inspired by Halloween. Hell, even just last year, you take a movie like Thanksgiving. The opening of Thanksgiving, which of course that POV shot is more of a Black Christmas style, but that's also, Halloween style in some ways, and some other things in the movie, of course, all these years later. So yeah, this is generally considered the scariest Halloween movie that has ever been made, just because of the feel of the movie, the eeriness of the movie. And to me, a lot of that has to do with that late 70s aesthetic, which I think is the scariest genre ever for horror, in my opinion. But yeah, so what specifically are critics on Rotten Tomatoes website saying about Halloween 1978? Well, there's gonna be a lot of fresh reviews for this movie, obviously, because it's 96%, so there's not gonna be a lot of rotten that we're gonna read, but still, we're gonna have some fun with this, and there's some good ones, I can tell. So the first critic said this movie was fresh, and they said, in horror, the Jack-in-the-Box scare is the quickest way to get a scream, but the still shocks are the ones that linger with you. Halloween has them both, but it specializes in the second. Yeah, and I think that's one of the great things about Halloween 1978 is it does have both. It's got the jump scares to it. There's definitely a couple moments that will stand out to you that you're like, oh, damn, okay, whoa. But it also just has that ambience, that eeriness to it, the creepiness that just lingers and lingers. The shots of Michael Myers, especially at night later on in the movie, are creepy as hell. Of course, at the very end of the movie, that whole thing, just the ambiguity with it kind of lingers with you. Okay, what happened? He got shot so many times. Is he real? Is he not real? What is going on here? But yeah, that's something just great about 78 is that it does have both, which I think is so important nowadays, especially, man. With all these horror movies coming out, there's so many that just specialize in, like they said, the Jack-in-the-Box scare, and that's what it's all about. These cheap quick jump scares, just like flashing demons in your face with the most modern technology they can add to just make it like the nastiest and craziest image possible, instead of really being creative and building that pure fear, that goes on in your head and lingers with you after the movie. Which, a lot of the Jack in the Box scares, those quick scares, they don't really linger with you. It happens, it shocks you, and then you just move on and you kind of just forget about it. But anyways, let's go ahead and read a Rotten review. So this critic, it was actually Variety, just in general. Variety magazine, Variety, whatever the hell, said, after a promising opening, Halloween becomes just another maniac on the loose suspenser. And yeah, the opening to 78 is definitely a holy shit moment. You're like, this kid did what? He killed his sister and his parents found him? What is wrong with this kid? Why is he not talking? Like, this is creepy. Plus, not only just the costume that he's wearing is pretty damn creepy as well, and iconic all these years later. But yeah, I would disagree with that. Is it just another maniac on the loose? No, the way this movie's shot, the look of Michael Myers, the eeriness to everything, and I'm going to sound like a broken record how many times I'm going to talk about that, but still, it's unlike anything we'd seen before. Especially up to that point in the genre, of course, Psycho and some other things like that did a great job. And obviously Halloween is inspired by movies, like Hitchcock movies and other things like that, Black Christmas and other things. But still, coming from a guy who has seen so many, especially of the 80s slashers that happened after Halloween, that happened after Friday the 13th, Halloween just still to this day hits different. It doesn't just feel like a cash grab maniac on the loose. Let's get some teenagers into the theater to see some crazy gore and some boobs and some shit like that. It just doesn't feel like that. So yeah, I would disagree, as probably most people would, about 78. But all right, the next critic came in and said it was fresh. They gave it a 4.5 out of 5, and they said even 40 years later, this proves to be a timeless classic. Carpenter shows his early greatness at executing a simple yet frightening concept with style and excellence. Michael Myers is an icon, and it's all because of this original gem. Yeah, Michael's definitely an icon, without a doubt. And yeah, those are some of the best horror movies ever. It's a very simple concept, but it's executed well. I always say this about like steak, for example. Like, don't throw a bunch of sauce on my steak. Don't go crazy with the steak. I don't need anything wild, right? Give me a steak that's simple, but just pulled off really damn well. Maybe some butter on there, maybe some herbs, but that's about it. Other than that, some salt and pepper, sear that baby up, cook it perfectly. And Halloween 1978 in a lot of ways is just like a damn good ribeye in some ways. Of course, it's a little bit more unique, but still, it's a simple concept just pulled off so well. And that's something Carpenter has done throughout his career. He's definitely had some movies where there's some things where the actual plot and the story is a little bit more creative and a little bit more out there. But Halloween 1978, yeah, it's a slasher just pulled off so damn well. All right, the next critic came in and said 78 was rotten. They had the audacity, those bastards, to say, well, this bastard, and they said, since there is precious little character or plot development to pass the time between stalking sequences, one tends to wish the killer would just get on with it. And that is a gripe with this movie, is the character development. Some of the characters are a little ridiculous and the acting is not all that great. That's definitely one of the complaints that I see from people, and it's one of the things that I do. I get that, and they don't put a lot of time into building the characters, but it makes you wonder. On its face, yeah, it's a killer trying to murder babysitters, which seems like just your normal exploitation film, right? Slumber Party Massacre, that kind of a thing. But it's just more than that. There's something weird about 78 that makes you, although they don't get into, oh, this is this person, this is how they grew up, this is their trauma, this is what they had for lunch last week. They don't get into all that, but still it makes you want to learn more about these characters. It makes you wonder, especially with Laurie. We see a little bit with her family and a little bit of a relationship with her. We kind of get to know her a bit, and her friends, how they're like a little bit more wild than she is. She's a little bit more reserved, your girl next door. Yeah, there's just enough there to keep you wondering, but I do understand that gripe with 78. All right, the next critic came in and said 78 was fresh. They gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And they said the horror genre can often rightfully be maligned. Many of the films within the genre are cheap exploitation films whose filmmakers care more about monetary return than crafting a great movie. Yeah, I mean, boobs and gore, you know what I mean? Just try to get some people shocked and scared, get some dates to come in to scare each other, and get some money and move on with our life. And, you know, I mean, maybe Carpenter in some ways was just trying to make some money from this movie, I'm sure. I mean, you got bills to pay, right? You got shit to do. But I mean, yes, there's a lot of things in 78 that were like happy little accidents, especially, you know, maybe you could consider that with the mask. I mean, they went and bought a cheap mask, cut it up, messed with the hair a little bit, spray painted it, and they're like, all right, let's go. This will probably be scary, I guess. And it ended up being a happy little accident and ended up being one of the most iconic masks in movie history, if not the most iconic mask in movie history. Yeah, so Halloween 70, I mean, it does have some things that, you know, maybe do feel a little like it's an exploitation film in a way. Some of the things maybe in the opening, especially like the naked sister with the big boobs getting slaughtered. Okay. But in the end, I mean, I really do think Carpenter set out to mostly just make a great movie, you know, on a very small, maybe $300,000 budget, which is just wild. All right. The next critic said 78 was rotten, and they said, it's boring. It's not scary. There, I said it. And yeah, I knew something like this was probably coming, and this is a common complaint with people who are not the biggest fans of the original Halloween. And I get it. This isn't the fastest paced movie. It's not the goriest movie. It's definitely not a movie for everyone. Hell, not everybody even likes the holiday of Halloween, you crazy bastards who don't like Halloween. I don't know what is wrong with you. Candy, dressing up, having great times, maybe having some drinks. Things are getting cold and crispy. You can put on your favorite sweater. Anyways, I digress. Still, I mean, I get why some people think 78 is boring. It is probably the slowest paced movie in the entire franchise. It's definitely one of the least gory movies in the entire franchise. So I get that. But if this is your cup of tea, this ambience, this creepiness, this eeriness, this guy stalking around, it's like, what is he doing? Why is he picking out these girls in particular? He's hiding behind hedges. He's hiding in the laundry. What's happening here? Why can't we just move on and get to it? And I get those complaints. That's definitely one of the complaints with Halloween 78 that I understand. I get it. But regardless, if you think 78 is boring, I still think you have to say to yourself, does this movie give off some great Halloween vibes? Yes, of course, even though it was filmed in the summertime, I think, or spring or summer in LA, and, you know, they had to place some leaves and stuff, and there's palm trees all over the place. Regardless of that, they still were able to pull that off, regardless if you think this movie was boring. So, okay, the next critic came in and gave it a 4 out of 4, and they said to call Halloween merely brilliant isn't giving it enough credit. As a horror film and as a historical milestone that single-handedly shaped and altered the future of an entire genre, it's downright transcendent. And in some ways, I think 78 gets more credit than it deserves for transcending a genre. Yes, I mean, it definitely transcended the genre, but 78 pulled a lot of things from lesser known movies before it. It just so happened that Halloween 1978 was kind of lightning in a bottle with Michael Myers and everything they did in the movie and the era it came out, you know, kicking off the craze of the slasher movies in the 80s and all that kind of stuff. So it gets a lot of that credit, but still, I mean, that's not to say, you know, it hasn't impacted the genre in probably the biggest way out of any horror movie ever made, which is just crazy. And, you know, probably doesn't get enough credit for it in some ways, but still a historical milestone. Also just the fact of like filmmaking in general, filmmakers saying to themselves, okay, I don't need to make a movie like E.T. or like a Marvel movie. I don't need to have these crazy budgets in order to pull off something great. Something that's scary, something that's going to have an impact on filmmaking and is going to be very rewarding from a creative perspective, you know, and horror is the genre for that. I mean, every single year we see movie after movie after movie that's made on a micro budget. But because of their creative approach to the movie, the way that they write the script and the ideas that they have, that's the core of the horror genre in a lot of ways. So like Halloween 1978, which kind of paved the way for this, you see these movies that are made on micro budgets that just explode. Like 78, which was made for like $300K and obviously, you know, went on to make gazillions of dollars. But all right, the last critic review I'm going to read said the movie was fresh, and they said the film hits us at a level deeper than most slasher films. And even as we are entertained by it, we are drawn in by its powerful suspense and its implications. Yes, like I said, I mean, it's just like it's a slasher movie on its surface, but there's just something that draws you in about the original Halloween from 1978. It really does. It's weird. It's almost one of those unexplainable things in a way. You're like, okay, this seems very basic, but you're so drawn in by the suspense and just the implications of what's happening here. You want to get to know these characters a little bit. Can you imagine a world where 1978 was the only movie in the entire franchise? How crazy it would be with all of just the theories and ideas and everything about the ending, about Michael Myers, about Laurie Strode, about Loomis. It'd be just wild. But anyways, everybody, that is my reaction to Rotten Tomato critic reviews for the original Halloween from 1978. If you want to see some more videos like this, let me know down in the comments down below. What do you think about Halloween 1978? What do you think about these critic reviews? Are they full of it? Are they right? You know, which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you not agree with? Let me know down below. If you want some more Halloween content from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future horror content on the channel, then make sure you subscribe. That is the best way to go about doing that. But anyways, everybody, thanks again for watching. My name is Matt, and I will see you in the next one.